in our love for other people, we have to be willing to step alongside, come alongside some people that we need to pour into. It's kind of like that pitcher that you're talking about. You know, there are things that fill the pitcher up, and there are things that pour the water out of the pitcher. But, you know, Jesus said, if we're in him, we'd have living water that flows out of us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the JourneyWise podcast. Thank you for being with us. My name is James Kent. I'm joined by my father, Dr. Ronnie Kent, and we are discussing social wellness. If you haven't listened to our last week's podcast, you can check that out because this is the second part of that little series we're doing. Dad mentioned last time that we had some very interesting things to talk about today. So thanks for being with us. Dad, what is it that where do we want to start?
Okay. Hopefully they're listening with anticipation, because they're going to get some great statistics and hopefully some great motivation to put social wellness right up there as the top priority in their life. I mean, you know, and here again, we've talked about this before. We have to categorize these aspects of wellness so that we can kind of focus on each one and talk about them. But you really can't, you know, just put them in their own little cubbyhole. They go together so much, like we talked about a lot last week. The social wellness is the great aspect of the church. And those of us who are Christians find our social wellness in the church. And so we want to help people appreciate the fact that the social wellness goes over into every aspect of your life. And in particular, you're going to find out today that physical wellness, mental wellness, emotional wellness is very connected to social wellness. And so let's start in that by looking at an ongoing study that started at Harvard over 70 years ago, where they had cohorts of people and they really were looking at issues as it related to what they really called happiness. Right now, the director is Dr. Robert Waldinger, who you can go to. He has written a book called The Good Life, which was a bestseller almost immediately. The Good Life. He also has a TED Talk that's been watched by, I think over 50 million times it's been viewed. So it's a huge area of interest. And so if you want to look at these statistics in more detail, but there are basically five areas that I've pulled out to look at. And one lesson to be learned from this study is that relationship satisfaction impacts health. Okay. So your social wellness impacts your physical health. Listen to this, what they found out, that relationship, and this is a quote from the study, relationship satisfaction at age 50 was the single greatest predictor of physical health at age 80.
And Dad, I would add to that really quickly, because it mentions this right under, you might be about to say this, but it also says that relationship satisfaction was a more effective predictor of health at age 80 than cholesterol, blood pressure, or any other health marker tracked by the study. That is extraordinary.
You think, well, it's my weight, or it's how much I exercise, or it's what I eat. Now, are those things important? Absolutely. But the thing that tracked most with your physical health at age 80, now, it doesn't necessarily mean, but I think I'm not going to say that it predicted that you would live to be 80. But that's not what they're saying. But your condition at the age of 80 was influenced more by your relationship satisfaction when you were 50. In other words, did you have good social wellness at age 50? And if so, that predicted what kind of condition you were going to be in at 80. And for it to be greater than those other markers, I would have flunked that on a test. I'll be honest with you. I would think, the social relationship, they're important and you should have good ones. But for it to literally be a predictor of health, I think should really say to people, okay, I need to cherish that, because what was real interesting, if you look at the details of this study, is that and I think this is in the TED Talk because I watched his TED Talk, because he flashed up what did people in the initial study, what did they pick as the thing that would make them happiest as they grew older. And of course, far and away, the number one thing was how much money they had. And yet it paled in comparison with what they found out. And that is, it's really the relationships that they had. So that's lesson number one. Lesson number two. Okay. This is a strong statement, but I'm just reading it. I'm not. Loneliness kills, and it's more prevalent than ever. Loneliness kills. And what in the paper I read, they quoted a 2023 U.S. Surgeon General report and let me read a few statistics from that Surgeon General report. Number one, the amount of time teenagers are spending in person with their friends is down 70% over the last 2 decades. 70%. Number two, 60% of adults say they don't feel very connected to others. Almost 2/3 of adults don't feel very connected to other people. And then the number of men who say they have 0 close friends is up 5 times since 1990. So 5 times more men say they have 0, no close friend, no buddy. No buddy, not body, but no buddy. And I'm going to tell you, if I didn't have my buddies to talk to and that would jerk a knot in my neck when they say, dude, what are you doing? And your spouse is obviously extremely important in your life, the number one most important person in your life. But my spouse, my wife, although she's pretty good about saying anything she wants to me. There are still things that she can't. In particular, my guy friends can appreciate why I'm doing things or where I'm coming from. So that's loneliness is just a terrible thing. And one other thing before I let you comment on the loneliness thing is that chronic loneliness has been found to increase dementia risk, the mental aspect of life. Chronic loneliness has been found to increase dementia risk by up to 50%. So if, we're looking at ways to treat dementia and all, relationships are so critical. So what's your thoughts on those two? We've got 3 more to go.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to read another quote from this article. They quoted an anthropologist, Robin Dunbar, and the quote says, "By far the biggest medical surprise of the past decade has been the extraordinary number of studies showing the single biggest predictor of your psychological and physical health and well-being is simply the number and quality of close relationships you have." It quite literally, the sentence after says, relationships are quite literally everything.
Why do you think, let me ask you this question. Why do you think that's the case? I got my own opinion, but it's not a psychological opinion. Why do you think that relationships affect your health, your well-being, your mental capacity? Why do you think, cholesterol is a big deal. But why would something like relationships?
I think it's the Imago Dei. I think that it is that we are made in God's image, and he is a triune God. And he has fellowship, Father, Son, and Spirit. And I think that is simply imprinted quite literally on our DNA. It reflects who he is. And there's no sweeter relationship in existence than the relationship, again, that he shares between Father, Son, and Spirit. I don't know that I have a better answer than just to say I think it's how he made us, and it reflects part of who he is. And because I think the other part is, I don't know how you read this, that we're in 2024, and the biggest medical surprise of the past decade is that relationships are everything in terms of psychological and physical health. I don't know how you read that and not, again, that point you to intelligent design.
Well, and God's been saying that for 6,000 years, or however you want to say when the Bible started. I mean, he's been talking about relationships, and really in the Bible, he's talking about imperfect relationships. I mean, the Bible, which I describe as God's family album, has a lot of people that struggle with relationships. I mean, we're studying, we're in Genesis right now in my Bible fellowship class, and we're teaching, 3 times in the 37th chapter of Genesis, it talks about Joseph's brothers hating him. I mean, those relationships were strained, and God knows relationships are strained, but they're so valuable that we have to keep working, just like Joseph did, even though his brothers treated him very poorly and sold him. Eventually he said, what you intend for harm, God intended for good. I love you. You're my brothers. I want our relationships to be restored. And they were, and the nation of Israel developed from that family. So we're not looking for perfect relationships. We're looking for meaningful relationships that I think the word that they used were satisfaction. Mm-hmm. A satisfying relationship has got its ups and downs. Let's face it, all of us. But, I think part of the reason, and I don't know that this is really spelled out in the study, but part of the reason that significant relationships have such an impact on the quality of our life at age 80, those relationships at 50, is that a relationship carries with it 2 things that I think have a lot to do with the quality of our life, and that is encouragement and accountability. Mm-hmm. And I think the more people we have around us, the more they can encourage us to eat right and to get our sleep and to, you don't look too good. What's wrong? Oh, well, I'm not sleeping well. What can I do to help you with the sleep? Let's talk about it. Or let's don't go that place and eat ice cream. Let's go eat some fruit. Or, and also saying to us, your clothes are looking a little tight these days. Do we need to start walking together? Or, what can I do to encourage you? Or, so I think it's in the relationships that we react with each other to the place where we cause each other to take a healthier lifestyle. So I think and also, as we've talked about in previous podcasts, that, stress in our life causes a lot of physical problems. It causes inflammation in the body, which is never a good thing. And I think we're able to offload a lot of our stress in those satisfying relationships so that other people bear the burden with us. And so I think that that relationships have a health benefit that maybe are implied, but not necessarily just obvious. All right. So social fitness. What do you think about that?
I mean, again, it's not rocket science, as they say, but literally what they're saying is, hey, we have found out that relationships are everything. So you need to prioritize relationships. You need to be intentional around relationships, make them a priority. I mean, I don't know that there's anything extraordinary that jumps out to me, but that's one of those, you have to say that based on what they found.
Right. And he just tells a few little things to do. When you think something nice about somebody, just tell them. It's easy these days. I mean, before you had to pick a phone and make a connection with them or write them a letter or whatever. now you can just text them, or if you do want to call them, I mean, everybody's, they wear their telephone with them no matter where they are. So, because I'm going to tell you, complimenting other people is a very powerful help, has a health benefit to it. Tell people what you appreciate about them. Like you say, I have a great friend from college, and see, I mean, I get emotional about it, and it's a college connection that causes me great satisfaction because I know my birthday he's going to call me. And his birthday, I'm going to call him now because he's made me feel guilty because I wasn't doing it before. Now we catch up with each other, on birthdays. That's really the only time of the year we talk, but it's as if we've been best friends. We've talked every day almost. Staying in contact with those close people in your life, I think brings with it a great sense of completeness. I hate to use the word significant, but it makes me feel more significant knowing that I'm significant enough in his life that he wants to remember my birthday. And so I think if we will just, if you think about it, in particular as us as Christians, if we feel, I think a lot of times the Holy Spirit moves us to do things that show other people our love for them. And it's the love of God flowing through us by his Spirit. And so if we think about doing something, we really ought to do it and connect with those people. So, make social fitness a priority. I mean, do it when you think about it. Okay. Number 4, check your energy to improve your life. And so what he's saying is, I read a book a long time ago about you've got people in your life that are very encouraging people or adding to your life. You've kind of got neutral people, and then you've got that group of people that are really pretty draining in your life. And it kind of goes over into the last thing that we're going to talk about, that is kind of a real eye opener too. But you have to balance out, we are, in our love for other people, we have to be willing to come alongside some people that we need to pour into. It's kind of like that pitcher that you're talking about. There are things that fill the pitcher up, and there are things that pour the water out of the pitcher. But, Jesus said, if we're in him, we'd have living water that flows out of us. And we're supposed to allow that water, that his Spirit to flow out of us in those social relationships that might be somewhat superficial, and we don't have a deep one, but they need to be poured into. But we also need to have those kind of relationships that are pouring into us, and we shouldn't feel guilty for needing those because that's the way we're made. So I do think you need to check whether things are making you feel better or worse relationally, just like we need to. I had to quit eating donuts, much to my dismay, because every time I ate a donut, I almost felt like I couldn't walk. I mean, I was so sluggish and all. So, as you get older, you just don't handle glucose as well. So I couldn't get that glucose load like I did before. So we just have to do the same thing relationally. We have to check and see whether relationships are positive to us or negative.
Yes, absolutely. And that really spills over into the 5th one. Ambivalent relationships are the most toxic. And so what they're saying is that, these are the relationships that are sometimes good, sometimes bad, or they use words sometimes supportive and sometimes demeaning. And the explanation that they give, and it makes sense, is that it causes the individual to be more vulnerable. So, you see this with parents and kids a lot, where sometimes it's you're doing great, love you, way to go. And then other times it's, just nastiness and shame and So what that does is, because we all want to be liked, we all want to be loved, we all crave to be good enough, essentially, you'll remain emotionally available and emotionally open to that person. But unfortunately, when they turn and they are demeaning, it leaves you more vulnerable. They actually say that those, flippy floppy relationships, for lack of a better word, those are actually more challenging and worse for you in terms of your health than a purely demeaning relationship. And so that is something, we talked a little bit about giving yourself permission in our last episode. One of the single greatest things I learned through my education in terms of learning how to, be a counselor, therapist, was boundaries. Learning that I really didn't have, they weren't super bad boundaries, but I really didn't have very good boundaries. I struggled with the idea of saying no to people. I prioritized wanting to be liked or make people happy. I'm a middle child too, so people pleasing is in my background. But it really set me free, learning that essentially, if I was to choose to continue to live that way after gaining the insight that I wasn't having healthy boundaries, it would be to my own demise, and that I would actually be not just an unhealthy human, but an unhealthy Christian. And I tell people, we're quick to reference the great commandment, love the Lord your God with our heart, soul, mind, and strength. But we lop off that last part, love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus had great boundaries. Now he made himself available, and there was no one better than him at that, but it took a toll, and he had boundaries. And so, we have to be willing to have boundaries. And sometimes that is limiting your exposure to people who aren't good for you. And so that's really what that's saying.
Well, one of the things that I think is most disappointing to me, because this is a classic example of expecting something good and receiving something bad, is the people who do experience church hurt. They go to church expecting to find, loving, caring people, and somebody says something or does something that is not Christ-like, because like you've said before, and we all know, the church is open to everybody. And unfortunately, there's some people that attend church pretty regularly that just don't have real Christ-like behavior. And so it turns them off to church, or even worse, it turns them off to Jesus. And what they have to realize is that's not Jesus. That's somebody in the church that either may not even have a personal relationship with Jesus, or if they do, they've experienced something in their life that's caused them to not that the fruit of that spirit, of his spirit, that love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, is not evident in their life. So, and it's like you've talked about a lot, at least, and that is the trauma that we encounter might not be, terribly great trauma, but even mild trauma, if it's repeated, has been shown to have a significant toll on somebody's mental health. So I just hope people will hear this and say that, and know that if you are in that kind of a relationship, that ambivalent relationship, or if you've experienced church hurt, to get some help to get through that. To work through that. Don't stay where you are. Like you say, if you're in that relationship, get out of it. And if and get to know Jesus through the Bible, and find you a different church if you need to, a different group of people that you can, worship God in spirit and truth.
Well, that wraps up our 2-part series on social wellness, and part of our larger or conversation about wellness in general and the 8 domains of wellness that we've covered in previous episodes. So if you missed that, I encourage you to go back and check it out and listen to it. We want to thank you for being with us. And as always, if you have questions about JourneyWise or you're interested in our other resources, you can go to JourneyWise.network to check that out. We also have a prayer wall there. And if you are in need of prayer, I encourage you to post whatever it is that you're going through there, and we will pray for you. Thank you for listening.
Hey guys, it's Shane. We're so excited that you're on this journey, and we want to thank you for joining us. If you like what you hear, it would mean a lot if you'd subscribe to the podcast and give us a 5-star rating and review. And of course, stay tuned to all that God's doing and working to make all of us JourneyWise.